Here's a clip from Tarabuster with Tara Devlin.
And people who know and watch the show know that I torture myself by watching Morning Joe. I put on MSNBC in the morning, you know, it's a habit. I guess I just want to know what's going on. Joe annoys me. I don't understand his accent. The way he says his own name, Joe. I don't know how he does it. He drags it out. What kind of accent is that? And they're all living in their ivory towers, telling us all what that we are capitalists. That's the other thing. So this week, this is what I was thinking about, what we're going to talk about. I mean, we're going to talk about Manafort. Of course, he's a criminal. It just never stops, right? But also this segment that I saw on Morning Joe, which got me so aggravated, and I see it coming, where they were harassing this one of the latest presidential candidates, John Hickenlooper, or whatever his name is, and asking him to declare himself a proud capitalist. And that he wouldn't do it. They couldn't believe it, and they took the entire segment to badger him. Why don't you call yourself a proud capitalist? What you created a business. This is a capitalist country. What? I don't understand. Like they just went from one pundit to the next, hammering him about why he wouldn't call himself a capitalist. And it's like a 5-minute clip. I don't know if I want to play the whole thing. I'll play some of it so you understand what I'm talking about in case you missed it. So I'm just going to play it, and maybe I'll pop in or whatever. Hold on.
Governor, and you certainly were a doer when it came to business. What you talked about sounds like the American dream as far as business goes, and wow, an advertisement for American capitalism. Are you concerned about some factions of your party embracing socialism?
Well, I think the Democratic Party is a big tent. And that's one of the things I've always loved about the Democratic Party is there are all kinds of ideas. You know, I look at my experiences and where I've tried to make a difference, and it really is getting people together, getting them to lay down their weapons, and then getting stuff done. And the labels, I think most Democrats don't care as much about the labels.
Well, would you call yourself a proud capitalist?
Oh, I don't know. You know, again, the labels, I'm not sure any of them fit. But I do believe that, you know, that ability to look at, you know, climate change and figure out how are we really going to create a sense of urgency and get people together. What we did with methane is one of the worst climate pollutants that there is. And, you know, we're the first state, and it's so far the only state to really address it aggressively.
Right. Let me ask you, I'll break it down even more. Do you consider yourself a capitalist?
Well, again, the labels, you know, I'm a small business person, so that part of the system that you would call capitalist, I get it. I understand it. I worked very hard. You know, when you open your own business, you know, when we first signed the lease in lower downtown Denver to build our brew pub, it was $1 per square foot per year. I mean, that is, if you haven't ever signed one of those leases, that rent is almost free. And it reflects how bad and how abandoned that part of the community was. We worked 70, 80, 90 hours a week to build the business, and we worked with the other business owners in Lower Down to help them build their business. Is that capitalism? I guess. I mean, sure. So in that sense of building community, that's one way to do it, one aspect of it. It's not all that it is, right? I served on 42 nonprofit boards and committees in that same 12-year period.
Right. Well, do you consider yourself a capitalist, and does capitalism work?
Well, I think I don't look at myself with a label. And I certainly think that small business is part of the solution. I think right now, the way capitalism is working in the United States, it's not doing what it once did. It's really not providing security and opportunity for the middle class and for poor people. And I think as a country, we need to step back and look at that and say, how do we get America back to the place it was where if you worked hard enough, no matter where you started on the economic ladder, you would have a chance to go ahead and create your own version of the American dream.
Governor, so you basically say capitalism is not working for the middle class and the poor. And yet you do oppose Medicaid for all? I mean, and where's your position on that?
Did you say Medicare for all?
Yes.
No, I think what I've said again and again is I believe that health care should be a right. All right, and I believe that we should get to universal coverage. I also think there are, somewhere north of 150 million Americans who get their health care through private insurance, through their business or some other way through private insurance.
On her face.
I don't think we're going to take away that insurance from them or make them go to a whole new system very easily.
So capitalism works in the private sector insurance, but not generally for the public?
No, it doesn't.
Well, I think that there are places where we need to make dramatic changes. There's 70 million people in this country that make less than $75,000 a year.
And millions have no health care.
We've got to find a way to get more of the business profits and their tax savings that come down to those workers. And I think, that's a challenge that as a country we've got to accept and work on.
Governor Donny Deutsch, so nice to talk to you. I'm going to pick up kind of the line of questioning where Joe and Susan were, and I'm frightened that you're in a position where it's hard for you to come out and say, I am a capitalist. We are a capitalist society.
That's
not a bad thing. That doesn't mean we can still have more income equality, but that is my concern, the way your party and my party is being hijacked, that it's uncomfortable for you to say, I am a proud capitalist.
Well, but the trick here is all these labels have gotten to the point where they divide us from each other.
That's my point.
One way or the other, you become a capitalist, and you're right. People think that's a bad thing. You become a socialist, that's a bad thing. I prefer to say, all right, how do we come together, whatever the label is that you feel most comfortable with, how do we come together and really move the ball down the field? How do we make sure that we are providing more opportunity to people that, started out with more challenges than
Governor, I just wanted to jump in.
us.
Can't we say socialism, is it bad for the Democratic Party to say socialism is a bad thing?
What?
That's not who we are?
Who is Donny Deutsch to tell us who we are?
When we had Social Security,
that's a socialist program.
At some point say that's some form of socialism. There are parts of socialism, parts of capitalism in everything, right? And are we going to try and get everything down to being purely capitalism? If you're purely market driven, right, then you end up with monopolies. You end up with all kinds of problems. So whatever label you choose, we're going to have to find ways to navigate and recognize that this is a system that incorporates aspects of many different economic theories.
All right. Hey, Governor, thank you so much for being with us. I know we hammered just one part of a...
Yeah, we couldn't let it go.
I wanted to ask you about Saudi Arabia. I wanted to ask you about foreign policy. We hope we get another chance to do that.
They're like rabid dogs on a chicken wing. Can't you say you're a proud capitalist? Why do you have to be a proud capitalist? And so they talk in contradictions as well, because they're saying, well, we know that capitalism needs to be regulated. There should be more equality. Well, how do you think you get the equality? You get it through democratic socialism. There are some aspects of society where we can do better together. See, capitalism unregulated is merciless, and it will devour not only you and me and our mama and papa and dogs and whatever and cats, and animals and trees, and it has the earth on the brink of destruction, but it will also devour democracy. And that's what's happening now. So we are at a point in this country where the wants and needs of working people, the working class majority, have a statistically insignificant effect on government policy. That's not democracy, and that is brought to us by capitalism, by rapacious, unregulated capitalism, where these rich oligarchs have the game rigged in their favor. So that's why it's really rich to listen to them talk about, aren't you a proud capitalist, like Donny Deutsch. Let's talk about Donny Deutsch for a second. He's in the next segment that I captured, and maybe we'll play it in a minute, where they could not even let it go. So after they said goodbye to their guest, they went to commercial, they came back, and they hammered it again amongst themselves. They just couldn't believe. They said, this is a crisis. in the Democratic Party that they're embracing socialism. And what is socialism? What are we embracing? Nobody is saying that the government should make people's shoes and clothing and cars. We're talking about Medicare for all. We're talking about a system that leaves no one behind, that we have a progressive taxation, which used to be an American value. And such radicals like Teddy Roosevelt were an advocate of progressive taxation because it prevented the creation of an intergenerational aristocracy that would grow so powerful, and their businesses that would grow so powerful that it would devour government itself. The very thing that we're supposed to be doing here, which is a democratic republic for the people, of, by, and for the people. There is no more socialist document. Now, let's put aside, of course, the hypocrisy of the founding fathers who owned slaves and didn't consider women human beings, and when they wrote all men are created equal, that's what they meant. But they pledged their lives, fortunes, and sacred honor to each other. What is that? If not, we're in this together. That is e pluribus unum. What is e pluribus unum? Out of many, one. So how do you have that kind of that motto and you leave people behind constantly? Well, how do we have a system that leaves millions without health care? That where 45,000 Americans die needlessly every year because they can't see a doctor. This is an unconscionable system. So other countries. And when now I know that the Republican Party they're hammering socialism and of course the of these elites. Now before I go down that road, let me just talk about Donny Deutsch because that's what I said I was going to do. So Donny Deutsch, he is in the 1%, of course, but he was born into wealth. His father was an advertising executive who owned an advertising company that he handed down to Donny Deutsch. So Donny Deutsch is no self-made capitalist. He was born into wealth and handed a business. So for him to sit up there in the ivory tower telling us who we are, what does that mean? And now when you ask the American people specifically about policy, about government policy, they like the socialist programs. They like that socialist Social Security and that socialist Medicare. And they believe by a wide margin, I'm trying to find the article here, that, okay, so they believe in socialist programs. So let's see, 70% of Americans support Medicare for all. 74% support a wealth tax, such as the one proposed by Elizabeth Warren. AOC's proposed 70% marginal tax rate finds a comfortable majority, but it is socialism. So, surely not. So there was a time where we understood that government policy created the kind of government that we want. So we're not a country that's just supposed to be funneling more money into the hands of the rich. That is the system that the founders fought a revolution to escape, where you had the wealth passed on to heirs and for generations, and you had this large mass of working class majority that were just hanging by a thread. And we've talked about this before, where what really gets me, as well as everything else lately, is this constant hammering on what a great economy this is. So, okay, so unemployment is low, but and finally we heard this month some wages ticked up a little, but when you're in the basement, you got nowhere to go but up, frankly. But when you're living in a country where the majority of the working class cannot handle a $400 an emergency, that's a problem. And you have millions without health care. This is a sick, very sick-ass society. And that's why I'm stressed out. It really angers me. And I I don't want to see, I want America to reach its potential. We have some really beautiful words in our founding documents. But will we ever reach the potential, though? Well, how long are we going to take it? We're going to be hammered down by the elite that keep us down in our place and in this broken system where it's pretty much every man for himself. And I don't know, when I was in the service, I didn't have to learn this in the service, that we don't leave people behind. So what does it mean to how do you call yourself a patriot and you're leaving millions behind without health care? And it really is the United States of serfs and lords.
Tarabuster is recorded live every Saturday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern at the RDT Daily Facebook and YouTube channels, and rebroadcast on Sunday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Progressive Voices, or anytime on demand on the Progressive Voices app.